Hello, everybody. This is Chadva Rose, your hostess for Jewish Adulting podcast. I have with me Tamar Schulman, who's actually a friend and a neighbor who I was able to guilt trip into being on my podcast. Um, and I wanted to just set the scene for you. Tamar is the director of Kahal Hasidim Daycare and is the executive director for all the divisions of Kahal Hasidim. She has a master's degree in Jewish education. In her spare time, she juggles being a mashgicha. She's a mom to 3 cats and 2 dogs, and somehow she takes time to help raise her 3 children with her husband Yochanan in Baltimore. So let's start at the beginning. I want to paint a picture for our audience about what the life of Tamar Schulman looks like on a regular basis, just so that we understand the context of why your situation is noteworthy. So can you describe, like, without going into like the details of like 7 to 8 or, really getting to minutia, but can you tell me like a typical day in the life of Tamar Schulman? Like, what time do you wake up? What time do you go to sleep? Do you sleep? Like, what is, just tell us a little bit about your schedule.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Chadva, for having me. I'm excited to be here. I've never done anything like this before, but it is definitely intriguing.
Yeah,
What does a typical day of mine look like? I mean, I feel like it's an average day for everybody. I usually get up around 5 in the morning, between 5 and 6.
not
That's
average.
my sleep. Um, and I just kind of chill out in the morning. Is that early morning is my me time, and then during the year, I wake up my daughter, Eliza, and I take her to school, and then I go to work, 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 and
Right,
then I work some more.
right.
Um,
What time do you
I
go to
work,
bed?
I go to bed. I try, if I'm not doing a mashgicha event, if I'm home at a normal hour, I try to get into bed around between 10 and 11. But then I like to like unwind and watch TV and just chillax. So I usually only fall asleep probably around 12-ish.
Um,
And I'm not a good sleeper. I wake up throughout the night, so I drink a lot of coffee. It is very rare for anybody to see me without coffee during the day, without a cup of coffee in my hand, and that is how I function.
okay, okay. Um, and then how many weekends do you think you work? Like out of a month?
A lot. Most recently, I've done a lot more because that's why you haven't seen me, unfortunately. Um, it's Baruch Hashem, the mashgiach world is picking up, and there's lots of events on Shabbosim, so I've been taking on definitely a lot more jobs than I have before.
Okay. So I wanted you to share the minutia of this because I don't think you recognize or realize, and I hope that the audience will give feedback on this, that that's like maybe if you fall asleep, which you just told me you don't, maybe 5 hours of sleep, and
Maybe,
you don't sleep very well, so you're not getting that much sleep, and you
right?
work multiple jobs in the course of a week, and you have a husband, children, pets, and I'm just gonna testify on behalf of people who know you. You are excellent at all the things that you do. So you're
I
good at your jobs. Everyone likes you. You're in the community. You moderate Facebook pages, and you are just like a nice person who would give the shirt off her back in a very sneeze way if that was
oh,
necessary.
oh, thank you. That is true.
And never was that point more brought home to me than the first time you decided to donate an organ. Why don't you tell me your journey towards your first organ donation? What led you to that moment? How did it take place? Tell me that story.
Okay. Well, you are partly to blame for this story.
I'll take
Renewal
half as the fuss.
You can take half the zechus, and Yochanan, my husband, gets the other half of the zechus for this. So Renewal is an amazing organization that helps with kidney donations. They help facilitate finding matches, and they help with the hospital stay and just anything that the families need. So Baruch Hashem, there's quite a few Baltimoreans who have donated kidneys. And like probably 6 years ago, Renewal did an event in Baltimore to honor those people. And one of the people that were honored was Rabbi Majeski, who was the principal of TA, and he was my boy's principal. And I just felt like it was, good to go and honor him. It was good to, go and support this organization. So Chedva and I went. It was on a Motzei Shabbos, and we went and we had a really good time, I think. And after they had a donor and a recipient to meet on stage for the first time and just tell their stories, and it was just very, inspiring and amazing. And they said to us at the end of the event, they said, if you want to be swabbed to potentially be matched for a donation, then come to this line. So I remember looking at Chedva, and Chedva looked at me, and I said to her, like, do you think we should go swab? And we like looked at each other, and I was like, you know what, Chedva, they're never gonna call us. Sure, let's go. What do we have to lose? Let's go swab. So we got in line, and we both swabbed. And at that point, we went home. After the evening, we went home, and I totally forgot all about Renewal and all about the organ donation. Do you want me to stop there? Do you want me to keep going?
No, you're doing great. Fast forward
Okay.
to 6 years.
Fast forward to at this point, now it's 4 years later.
Okay.
I'm sitting at work one day. I am the director of Kahal Hasidim Daycare, like Chedva said. And for 5 years, my 6th year, Mir Hashem. And this was about 4 years ago, I got a change in my job, and I became the executive director as well as the daycare director. So I'm now responsible for everything relating to all of the divisions of Kahal Hasidim, which Baruch Hashem is growing. So it's a lot of responsibility. I did not have a lot of experience with this, and I didn't quite know what I was doing. The job kind of fell in my lap, and just being the team player that I was trying to put it all together and do a good job, but it was a struggle. My own children were going through their own issues with deciding what school to go to. Some were going into high school, and so they were having some, troubles. So life was, very chaotic and very hectic. And I'm sitting at work. It's probably about sometime in June, maybe early July. And I get a phone call. I was sitting at work, and I get a phone call, and it says renewal. And I said, renewal? What's renewal? And I pick up the phone, and it's Mrs. Jackie Greenfield, I think her name is, from Renewal. And she said, I just want to ask you, we have somebody who needs a kidney. He's a 39-year-old guy that lives in New York and is in desperate need of a kidney. Are you willing and able to donate to him? So my first inkling reaction was to be like, of course. But then I took a step back, and I was like, well, maybe I should discuss it with my husband, and maybe I should actually think about it, and maybe I should actually like talk to my boss and talk to Rabbanim and, do a little bit of research. That was like my second thought.
Okay. Well, how long had
Um,
you been on the job at this point? Like
a
the new
month.
position? A month, right? I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember going like, and they were actually really supportive. I remember like it
Yes,
was a whole
I
thing,
will
but
get to that.
yeah, we'll get to
I
that.
will get to
Okay.
that. So I came home, and I mentioned to my husband, and it was just, I really wanted to do it, but the time was just not right. With all these issues were going on, and like I said, with the job, and I was not confident that I could do it the best, that I could do it the right way. So I called her back the next day, and I said, look, I'm really very serious about wanting to donate. Unfortunately, right now, there's just other stuff going on in my life that I don't think that right now is the best time for me. But definitely, please call me, keep me posted and keep me on your list, because I'm very interested in donating, and I will donate. And she said, no problem. There was no pressure at all. She really understood, and she wished me well. And I hung up, and I really felt very bad, but I also felt like I had made the right decision. And I said to myself, like, I will donate. This is not the end of the conversation. This is just, for right now, what's got to be.
Right.
So I went on with life, and a couple of weeks later, probably 3.5 weeks later, again, I'm sitting at work as always, and my phone rings again, and it's her again. And she said, like, I'm really sorry to have to ask you this, And again, no pressure, but not just like really no pressure. She really meant no pressure. She said that they couldn't find anybody else to donate to this young man, and he was getting worse. And is there any way that my life circumstance had changed, and that I would reconsider donation would reconsider donating now or in the very, very near future? So at that point, I was like, "Of course I will." When they're calling twice and when they're saying that, I of course said I would love to help. I'm not going to let somebody die just because it wasn't a good time for me. So at that point, I said, "Okay, now let me like talk to my husband again, and let me talk to my Rob again, and let me talk to my boss again, and let me just, you know, work things out, and then I will be in touch with you." So I came home and I spoke to my husband and I spoke to my children. My children thought I was absolutely crazy that I would want to do something like this, but they didn't really tell me no. My daughter, who was 10 at the time, Eliza, she had the harder reaction, and she was very concerned. And she said to me, I remember vividly, she was crying and she's like, "I want you to donate, but I'm so scared. And what's going to happen if something happens to you?" And I called Renewal and I said, like, "Do you have any kids' books about, a parent donating an organ?" And they said, "We really don't." There was one book that a child wrote about her mother giving a kidney to her brother, but there was no book, from a child's perspective or from an adult's perspective about, about a donation and how the child felt about it. So Elise and I jokingly said that we were going to write a book about our experience, which, maybe one day we will, but to this point, we have not done that book yet.
I mean, you have so
So
much time. I don't see what the holdup is.
exactly, which is why
Audience.
this is not
No,
priority.
I want the audience to get involved here, some audience participation. If you think Tamar should make the time, I mean, if she's not sleeping that well anyways, then she should definitely write a book, right? Let's make sure to inundate her with our opinion about this.
Requests.
Yes,
Okay, yes.
request. Keep going.
Maybe if people send me the request to write the book, I'll actually get my act together and I'll actually write it. So,
Okay,
maybe
okay,
maybe it will happen. This
okay.
that'll be the good that comes out of this podcast. What can I say?
Okay. I hope more than
So
that, but yes.
exactly, hold me to it. So Elisa was very nervous. Like I said, the boys really didn't. They thought I was crazy, but they didn't have an opinion one way or the other. I called Rabbi Young Rice, who is the Rosh Kollel and my boss at Kahal Hasidim, and I said to him, like, "What should I do?" And he said, "Of course you do it. Why do you, what, like, what's the question? Why are you asking me? If you want to do this and your husband supports you, then absolutely you should do this." And I said, "But Rabbi Young, I just took over." I said, I'm struggling with what's going on with keeping up, my job that I'm kind of making up and making up as I go along. And I said, "I'll obviously have to take some time off." And he said, "Do it." He said, "We will hold the fort down. The school will survive. Do it, do it, do it." I had bracha and his full word. So then I called our Rav, who lives in Muncie, and I asked him. And it was interesting because he told me, he also had the same reaction. Like, if this is what you want to do, it's the biggest mitzvah, you can do it. And if your husband's on your side and supporting you, you should, definitely do it. So I said, "Okay." And he said to me, "The one thing you have to do before you agree is get a bracha from a Rav. Get a bracha from a big Rav." And I said, "Rabbi Stefanski, I just did." And he said, "No, no, no, bigger, big, big, big Rav." He wanted me to call Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky and get a bracha from him. Right. So I called Renewal back and I said to Renewal, like, "Look, I'm willing to do it, but this is what my Rav's stipulation was." And she said to me, every time Renewal has a match or Renewal has a surgery, they get a bracha from Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky. And I said, "Okay, but my Rav wanted me to hear the bracha specifically. He wanted it to be said to me, not through Renewal." So at that point, I called my dad and I said, "Abba, you get to call Shmuel Kamenetsky and you get to get the bracha for me. Oh, at least you get to you pick up the phone and explain to him why I'm doing this and that, I need the bracha." So it took us a few days to get through to him, but Baruch Hashem, we ended up getting through to him and he gave me a bracha that it should be Matzliach. And that was the end of the conversation. And then I called Renewal and I said, "Okay, so let's schedule the surgery." So at this point, it's probably the beginning of August. And I said to Renewal, "Okay, so here's the story. I start school back. I'm a daycare director. my teachers start school August 22nd. School starts a week later on Labor Day, the day after Labor Day. I said, if you want me to donate my kidney, I need to be back at work in time for school year starting. And she literally laughed at me and she said, we can't move that fast. And I said, okay, but this is, my timeline. I can't, what kind of director misses the first day or first week or first whatever of school? Like you can't do that. It's not fair. And she said, okay, we're going to try to see what we can do. So she got me in touch with the hospital. It was North Shore Hospital in Long Island, New York. That's where the recipient is. Renewals policy, for the most part, is that the donor will travel to where the recipient is and donate there. So because Leor is from New York, that's where the surgery ended up being. So, but I had to go for testing and I had to go to match. So basically, we went for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. We went every single week for the pre-op, for the testing, for the results, just everything. And I kept telling them, look, if you want me to do the surgery, that's fine, but it's got to be before I got to be back in time for school starting. And he kept saying to me, it's not going to happen. It's usually a 3 to 6 week window with all the tests and the results, and then this and then that. And I said, I don't really have that time. So they said to me, okay, why don't you just wait until January or December when it's a little bit calmer time at work and then come and donate then. And so I called Yochanan and I said to Yochanan, what should I do? Should I push this off? And Yochanan, in his infinite wisdom, said, look, if you're donating just to donate, then okay, donate in December, January, next summer, next year, whenever. If you're donating to save this guy's life, it needs to be now. Or as soon as as you're available. He said, don't worry about school. Rabbi Youngers give you the bracha. School will happen. Your teachers will step up and they'll make the school year success. And it won't start the way that you want it to start, but it'll happen nonetheless. And if you're doing it to save this guy's life, don't make him suffer anymore just because you want to be controlling of how your school year starts. So I said, you know what, dear, you're absolutely right. And I called the hospital back and I said, okay, I will donate whenever, as soon as possible, whenever that is. And the surgery took place about 3 weeks later on August 22nd.
Was
So
that the fastest time they had ever turned around?
was the best time they'd ever seen.
Mm,
I forgot her name, from Renewal, the lady, not from Renewal, from Lakeshore. She told me that every single test that I did, she had to rush results. She had to
mm,
pay, the hospital had to pay so much money to rush every single test and every single result. She had to have doctors' meetings that the doctors usually meet once a week. In my case, she made them meet twice a week so they can all approve me, because when they say testing, I literally went for a whole day from 8 in the morning to about 4 in the afternoon, and it was test after test after test after test after test. You do the MRI, they do a CAT scan, you meet with the psychologist, you meet with the social worker, you meet with the nutritionist, you meet with the surgeon, you meet with the phlebotomist, you meet with the anesthesia guy. You are literally back to back to back to back to back meetings, and how they coordinated all of that in such a short time
mm.
is an unfathomable, phenomenon, but she did it and she pulled off the inevitable.
So
And
let
so
me,
from about, yes, the surgery was about 3.5 weeks.
right. So tell me what the psychiatrist or psychologist discussed with you. What was that like?
So they basically asked me why I was willing to donate. They could not understand why I was not doing. They kept asking me if I'm donating to a relative, and I said no. I said it's a total stranger, and they could not understand why I would be donating to a random stranger and why I felt the need to donate to a random stranger. They're like, well, aren't you getting ready for the school year? Isn't this your busiest time? Why would you pick this time to donate to somebody who you don't even know? I think they thought I was totally crazy, which, I am, but not for that
Yeah.
reason.
Hmm.
And they approved me anyway. I think that they probably did. They were a little bit inspired and they were a little bit,
Well, what did you answer?
impressed that I was so
What did he
determined.
say?
Because this guy needs a kidney. It's pretty simple. Like, why should I let this guy suffer for that much longer or die because it wasn't a convenient time for me?
Right.
And I said, I will, and they said to me like, how are you going to feel? Because if the kidney donation doesn't take, or if he ends up dying anyway, even if it's not right away, but if he ends up dying, like, how would you feel? And I'm like, look, I'm doing my part. God runs the world. And I say this to these non-Jewish surgeons and the psychiatrist. I'm like, God runs the world. So if he decides that the kidney is not going to take, I've done my part, but if I'm sitting here, I know God gave us two kidneys and one of them is to share. So if I can share with this guy, the only thing I knew about him before the surgery was that he is an Israeli young man. He's married with, at that point, she was a 2-year-old daughter. And, to give this little girl back her father and to give, his wife back her husband and to give him back to his family and his parents and his life, who am I to say absolutely not to?
Right. So tell me about, um, you know, it sounds like you had a wonderful attitude. It sounds like you were doing God's work. But tell me about recovery from the surgery. Tell me about what that was like. Tell me what kind of resources renewal, had. How long were you in the hospital for? Or when did you come home? Was that, what was standard? And tell me that part of the story.
Okay, so I'll try to answer all your questions, but if I forget one, you'll have to
I'll
ask me
prompt
again.
you. I'll prompt you.
Okay, good. So we went for the surgery. The surgery was on a Monday morning. So we drove up at the crack of dawn. Um, Actually, we drove up late, late, late Sunday night. A good friend of mine's daughter was getting married a week and a half after the surgery, and her bridal shower was the day before the surgery. So I had to be here for a bridal shower. And then after bridal shower, we left. We drove, we probably got to New York at some crazy hour. Went to sleep. We got up and we went to the hospital. We had to be there at 5:30. So we get to the hospital and renewal again. Shout out to them; they are amazing. They had one of their volunteers who came there and sat with us and sat with Yochanan and answered questions. They brought Yochanan food and they just really held our hands every step of the way. That they did things that we didn't even know we needed, or they were prepared with things that we would need even if we didn't know we need them. So they were there. So we go to the surgery. We're all ready. I'm waiting. I'm pre-opt. I'm IV'd. I'm sitting waiting. They even like come and they take a little video of you if you're willing to just like talk about your experience and why you're doing it and whatever. So we did all that, and we're sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the surgery. And everybody else in the surgeon's waiting room has gone to surgery, and we're still sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And they came to us. My surgeon came to us, and then the recipient surgeon came to meet us also. And we're like, what is taking so long? Like, surgery was supposed to start 20 minutes ago and we're still waiting. And they're like, oh, your recipient is running late. And I was like, okay, that's very interesting. So we're still sitting and waiting, and the whole place, the whole like wing at this point is ghost town. Nobody is there. And all of a sudden, we hear, like maybe 2 rooms over from us, we hear Hebrew, talking Hebrew. And I was like, Yochanan, that's them. And he's like, yeah, because again, all we knew about him is that he was Israeli. Yochanan's like, yeah, that's probably them. I was like, go check them out. And Yochanan goes, no, there's HIPAA laws. And I was like, I don't care. Go stalk them out. Go see what they're like, and maybe introduce yourself, whatever. And Yochanan, being the amazing ethical person that he is, refused. So we sat there waiting, and eventually they came back a little bit later and they said, okay, you're ready for surgery. And they wheeled me back. I remember getting on the table, and then obviously don't remember anything else except for waking up in recovery. They updated Yochanan throughout the surgery, and they just, kept, giving him updates, and everything was going well. Um, and that was the surgery. So recovery, I was in a hospital for about 2 days, maybe 3 days. And then I came home. They made us stay in New York for about a week, until like a week and a half post-op. We stayed in Muncie with our Rav and Rebbitzin. And then once we got the clearance to, we had to go back to the hospital about a week or week and a half post surgery. And at that point, we were then able to come back to Baltimore. and I was able to go back to work a few days after that.
Okay,
Which is not
so
the norm, and no one
yeah,
should no one listening should
right.
say like, "Oh, really? It's only about a 2 weeks." No, should have been a lot longer, and thank God I have some really good teachers, and they will, vouch for the fact that I was at work way too early. I ended up having a slight complication, which, some would argue it's because I went to work back to work too early. I would not argue with that. I would say it was just a seroma, which happens with any surgery. But one of my teachers is actually friends with my brother, and she was so concerned about me one day that I just was not feeling good and I didn't look good. She called my brother and said, "You might want to get your sister to the hospital." He called my mother, who then called me and was like, "You're going to the hospital." So I ended up going to GBMC, and I ended up having to go get a drain to drain the seroma, and I had a drain in me for about a week and a half. But other than that, after that, I was totally fine, and it was, that was the easiest recovery that I could have had.
So, um, so you're everyone. I just want you to know. I feel like I have to give some perspective here. She's making it out like it was no big deal, but I remember you had a hard time walking. You were in a lot of
I
pain.
did. I'm not
Um,
going to deny that.
so I guess my question to you is, what about um, this experience then led you to be willing to do it again when the second call came in?
So honestly, it was seeing Lior and meeting Lior, which I haven't even discussed how I got, how it came to meet him and, get to know him. But just, the relationship that we've built, I mean, I blame him because he spoiled me, just by welcoming us into his life and into his family. We are not just like friends, we're family at this point. We talk, regularly, we see each other as often as we could. And you know, it's a beautiful relationship, and I'm just whatever. So that was the kidney part of it.
Right.
So fast forward a couple of years, which is about a year, maybe a year and a little bit. In our renewal kidney donors group, somebody had posted a picture of a 6-week-old baby, and the 6-week-old baby needed a liver transplant. So she posted the ad, and she said, if anybody's interested in donating a liver to this baby, please PM me. So I took the flyer and I literally just sent it to my amazing husband. Didn't say any words, just sent him the flyer. And he responded with, "Go for it." And I was said, "What? Not even a discussion or a nope." He's like, "Nope, clearly you want to do this. I support you. Go ahead and try to, get tested." So I called the number on the flyer and I spoke to this amazing nurse. Her name is Rifki. She's from Liver Lifesavers in New York. And I said, I want to, test to see if I can possibly match to this baby.
Right. So
So
one
she and I
second,
had
one
like a,
second. So let's just step back a little bit. Tell me why you had was it the connection that you had to Lior that made you say like if I did it once I could do it again, if I was able to, if I was able to put aside stuff going on at home and my new job and then I could do it again. What was the like something in your head said, let's do this again.
it was
And
all of the above. It was definitely, the relationship that I had with Lior and seeing what a difference I've made in his life and seeing that, his child now has a father. And, before the surgery, Lior could barely walk, outside without getting winded or without, not feeling well. Now he's literally running after his 2-year-old daughter. Um, and the recovery, yes, it was bad, but sort of like childbirth, you like forget kind of how bad it was, but it was
okay.
worth it. Even all the pain, all the aggravation, all the whatever, it was totally, totally, totally worth it. So when I saw this flyer for this baby, I said, look, if I can help somebody else, why not? Like, with the kidney, there's no lifelong changes that I have to make in my life to prevent me from, it's not like I'm, diet or there's nothing that I can't do So why not?
Okay.
And that was kind of when I saw this baby, the picture of this baby, I said, okay, I said to myself, if I can save two lives, why would I not want to do that?
Okay. So, what was the screening process like the second time around? Was it the same?
It was the same. It was 47 tubes of blood, and
Wow.
it was, yeah. We went up to New York, went to a different hospital this time, and it was also meeting with the psychiatrist. Now, this psychiatrist for the liver actually really scared me off. Because he kept saying to me, "Why do you want to donate?" And I said, "Because I want to save somebody." And he said, "Yeah, but why you? Why do you feel the need that only you can save people? And why do you feel the need that only you, that it's all on you? Why don't you leave it for other people? And then why do you want to do it now? Why not wait 5 years? Why not wait 10 years? Like, why do you want to do it now?" And
Right.
I said, "Because someone's suffering and I can do it now. Why shouldn't I?" But he really was like, and he literally said to me, he goes, "What is wrong with you? What trauma did you have in your childhood
Oh,
that
wow.
made you this person that wants to donate all of their organs and that wants to go through all this pain? Like, it's painful. The liver is a lot more painful than the kidney." He said, "Why do you want to do this to yourself? Like, what is wrong with your psyche that you want to do this?" And I hung up with him and I called Jochen and I said, "He's not going to prove me." Because, like, the way with both of the surgeries, they have these doctors that you meet all of these doctors individually, and then the doctors all meet together and they all have to agree and say, "Yes, from my perspective, she's able to donate. She's mentally sane, she's physically fine, she's, etc." So it was a group decision, and I really thought that this psychiatrist that spoke to me would not allow me to do it because he just really had me questioning myself and questioning my motives and questioning why I would be willing to donate to a complete stranger a second time. Like he said to me,
Right.
like, what if your kid needs a transplant down the road? And I said
Right.
to him, "Well, if my kid needs a transplant down the road, then I would like to hope that I said, first of all, there's no guarantee that I would match to my child." I said, "And hopefully I would like to think that because I'm being willing to help somebody else's child, I would like to hope that somebody would be willing to help my child if needed. But why should I hold on to all my organs now to save for my child who may or may not need it when there's somebody right now who actually does need it and can benefit and will live because of my organ?"
Right. So, how much longer after that conversation, that you didn't think he was going to approve you, did you get, did you get, did you hear back from them?
So they approved me probably a week or two later.
Mm-hmm.
And then came the part of calling our Ravs and getting, well, I mean, our Rav, speaking to our Ravs along the way, but it was like an abstract, should I do it? And then it was, okay, I got the approval, I need the final bracha to be able to actually go through and do this. So again, shout out to Rabbi Young Rice, who was amazingly supportive and again was like, "Why are you asking? Of course you should do it." Assuming that you want to and Yochanan's on board, don't worry about work, we will make it happen. My teachers, my staff, the parents were also just incredibly supportive and encouraging me to do what I wanted to do. Um, and our Rav said the same thing. He was a little bit more hesitant. Our Rav in Muncie, he actually did his own research and spoke to his own doctor because he was afraid that since I had only one kidney, he wanted to make sure that I wasn't at higher risk for complications or putting myself at more risk than if I hadn't donated the kidney. So he actually called his own doctor. And I actually called my own doctor here, which I didn't even call my doctor for donating a kidney. But he said to me that, you should really call your doctor for donating a liver. And so I called my doctor and I had a conversation with her. And she also did some research just to make sure that that it really was not, you know, that it was an informed decision. And once I got the brachas from everybody, I said to Liver Lifesavers, "Okay, let's do this." And
Okay.
that was a whole interesting story all by itself. Do you want me to go into that now?
Um, yeah. I don't think I know
Oh,
that story.
okay, you do. Once I tell you, oh yeah, I remember.
Mm.
So I tested for the 6-week-old baby, and Baruch Hashem, overnight they had like I think 300 people who all agreed to test to match to this baby. So they found somebody pretty instantly to match this baby, and the baby ended up having the surgery right, shortly after I said that I wanted to. And then Rifki from Liver Lifesavers called me and said, would you be willing to donate to somebody else? And I said, sure. My Rob said, as long as it's a Jewish person, we don't care, who you donate to. So they had a Hasidic woman in Williamsburg that was in desperate need of a kidney. So I went back to New York to test to match to her specifically, and I did match to her specifically. But in my true Tamar, with my life being as crazy as it is, fashion, I told Liver Lifesavers, like, I need to have the surgery sometime in January. This is probably like October, November time when I found out about this organization and I agreed to donate. I said I need it to be sometime in January because I need to be back at work by the end of February. And I was giving myself a month this time. I learned my lesson. That was the one thing I promised my daughter when I told my kids I wanted to donate my liver. I promised Eliza that this time I would not be stupid and I would actually take off work longer. And I have an amazing assistant director who really also told me, like, she will not let me back in the building. And, she really was able to hold down the fort. So I felt a lot more confident this time with leaving work and leaving work for so long. So I told them I need to have the surgery sometime in January. Um, so this Hasidic woman from Williamsburg at that point she was stable. She was going to need a transplant, but her numbers were stable, so the surgeons didn't want to, even though she would need a transplant, the surgeons didn't want to go in preemptively. They wanted to wait until her numbers were decreasing and then have the surgery. But because I really wanted it by January, I said, well, is there anybody else that I could donate to? And so then Rifki called me and she said, there's a little, she was almost 2. She turned 2 while in the hospital. So let's just call her 2. There's a 2-year-old little girl from Florida and she needs a transplant also. Would I be willing to donate to her? And I said, okay, let's do this. So I went back up to New York a third time so that I could match to her. She actually lives in Florida. But in Florida, there's a law that they won't give a liver transplant to a minor. I'm sorry, a live transplant to a minor. So they ended up having to go to New York, and that's why we ended up having the surgery in New York at a different hospital than my kidney surgery, but a hospital in New York nonetheless.
That's a good story. Um, third time's a charm. So
There are times that
third time's a charm. Um, so, so what was the recovery like for the second time?
that was definitely more of a challenge.
Oh,
It was definitely a lot harder. I was throwing up in the hospital. Instead of being in the hospital, I think they were originally told me it would be like 4 days. I ended up being in there like about a week. I couldn't keep anything down. I was throwing up. We couldn't figure out why. And eventually, after a week or a week and a couple of days, they let me leave the hospital. But again, they wanted me to stay in New York. So that was definitely more of a challenge because I left my children at home and my dogs and my cats, they were all at home. My amazing husband was with me, of course, but it was definitely more of a challenge. So putting that aside, they put a drain in you to gather to basically to prevent a seroma, which is what I got from the kidney um surgery. They put one in me preemptively, and all of a sudden, not right after they put it in me, but also when I left the hospital, I was just itchy from head to toe, under my feet, all over my body. It was just itchy, 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 and completely out of control. And I couldn't figure out why. And I kept going back to New York because they would say, okay, come to the hospital to get checked out and see our dermatologist. And she wanted to prescribe, these strong narcotics. And then my surgeon was like, no, I don't want to take any strong narcotics because she has, one kidney and now, barely a liver. So we don't want her to take any of these narcotics. So I was very limited in what I could take. But I had this drain in me for about 6 or 7 weeks. And during that time, I was really going back and forth to New York at least once a week. Sometimes it was every 2 weeks. and they were just monitoring me and making sure that, the drain was okay, that the stuff, getting MRIs, getting CAT scans to make sure that the liver was growing back and that there was no sign of infection. At first, there was a little bit of an infection, so they gave me antibiotics and that, cleared the infection, but they were just monitoring me very closely. But that monitoring required me to go to New York. And every time I kept saying, like, why can't I get monitored here? My surgeon's exact words were, "No surgeon wants to clean up another surgeon's mess," which I guess makes sense, but I can't drive, so it was really all on Yochanan to drive me back and forth from New York, every week or every other week, which was definitely a bit of a challenge. But I
So,
would still do it again, just making the
are
record
there
straight.
any more organs you can donate?
So my mother told me that the only other organ I can donate is my hair. And Yochanan looked at my mother and said, "Then you clearly don't know your daughter." So I'm sure that there are other organs that I can donate. Being that we're only like what 5 months out since the surgery,
No.
I think I'm gonna wait, another little bit, but it is definitely not off the table. Um, and if I can help somebody, then, why not? Like this recovery was definitely a lot harder. I was definitely a lot slower and a lot, it took a lot more out of me. But they say that the liver surgery was much harder than the kidney. The kidney, they take the kidney out and then you're done. The
Right.
liver
Talk,
has to
talk
grow
about
back.
talk about the procedure, because it's really interesting how they do it. You explained it to me, how they actually remove it from you.
Which one? Which
The,
which organ?
the kidney, the kidney.
The kidney. So it's done laparoscopic. I've got 5 little incisions along my stomach, and it comes out. They went through the belly button and whatever, and they take it out. Because I donated to a baby, they only took 30% of my liver.
Mm,
If I was going to donate to an adult, they would have taken 70% of my liver. But the cool thing, and only Hashem can pull something like this off, they took the left part of my liver, but it grows back on the right hand side. So you can't donate your liver twice, unfortunately.
oh, that's interesting.
But really, it's really just 5 little scars. Like
Right,
it's not major abdominal surgery. Like I had 3 C-sections. It's nothing compared to that.
right. So when did you meet the second organ
So I
recipient?
did meet her, right? Her name is Rosie. I met Rosie probably toward the end of our hospital visit, maybe the day we left the hospital. Her parents had come to visit us, and it's actually really interesting with backing up for a second to Lior and my kidney. The day after surgery, Jochen and I were walking the hall, and we were on the same floor as Lior and Shiri, his wife. So we were walking one direction, and because they want you up and moving right away, we were walking one direction, and Lior and Shiri were walking the other direction, and we literally bumped into each other in the hall. So
Mm,
even though renewal really doesn't want people meeting beforehand, we ended up meeting, just very, non-planned in the hallway of the hospital.
mm-hmm.
And that was it was like a special moment. And then with Rosie, Lior actually came to the hospital to visit me just because he's awesome like that. And like I said, we've got this nice connection. So he came to spend time with me. And he was sitting in the hospital with Johan and I talking. All of a sudden, there's a knock at the door, and it's Rosie's parents. So with Rosie, because she's a baby and then because I'm an adult, we were in the same hospital, but the buildings were not attached. They were across the street from each other.
Mm,
So it was actually kind of cool. It was that we were both in the operating rooms at the same time at a hospital across the street. And I went first. They took the liver out of me. They take it down the elevator, and they have like a police or security like escorting the liver through the elevator. They shut down all the other elevators in the hospital so that nobody can steal it. And they securely walk it across the street underground to the other hospital, to the children's hospital, and then bring it up to the OR where Rosie was. So she was really with her parents in her hospital, and they couldn't really get to us very easily.
right.
Um, but they did come and visit us, so they did come, and it happened to be when Lior was there. And so I jokingly, I introduced them, and I said, you see, my organs do work. Like Lior sitting here is proof that my organs do work and that Rosie will be fine.
Mm,
Rosie had had another surgery, another liver transplant before me, and it was a cadaver surgery, so it was a dead person donor, and unfortunately her body rejected it. So her
mm.
parents were very scared of rejection and very nervous about it. So I said, "Look, don't worry, like have faith. Lior's proof that my organs are strong and that Rosie will really have a complete refuah shalema and that she'll be totally fine."
Aw, that's sweet. So, what kind of like what advice would you give somebody who's considering organ donation?
Totally do it. There's not even a thought in my mind. It's definitely something that I would say both spouses have to be on board. Families not so much. I mean, my parents and my in-laws were supportive, but like, in that, why would you do this to yourself kind of way. But I mean, after I did it, they were super proud of me and super, appreciative of the fact that I did it. And I think that now they're in awe of me seeing, the relationships that I have with Lior and with Rosie's mom, Connie. I think that they were impressed, but I would definitely say do it. It is the best feeling in the world. Lior and I, our surgery was on the 22nd. So we talk usually a few times a week, but if life gets busy and we don't, then at least on the 22nd of each month, we say happy kidney anniversary and we celebrate it. I'm trying the same thing with Rosie's mom, Connie, but it's a little bit different because she's a little bit busier. So it's not as the communication isn't as much, but it's definitely just the best thing that you could do. And when I get videos of Rosie running around and Lior chasing his daughter, it's the best feeling in the world. Like, I helped them. I mean, it's all Hashem, but I really helped, give them life and bring them to where they are today. And it really did not, yes, it cost me time off of work and it cost me, you know, a little bit of, okay, maybe a lot of pain, but it was still totally worth it. And it's short-term pain. That's the way I look at it. Like, yes, it was a few weeks or a few months, but in the grand scheme of things, they're alive now because I was able to help them. So why would anybody not want to do it?
Right. Well, what do you think is the biggest misconception about organ donation? Like, do you have a
That's a
sense?
tough question.
Yeah.
Um, what
What
is the
was
biggest
your
misconception about?
what was your misconception? If
Well, for me, people don't know this about me, but I really don't like doctors and I really don't like hospitals. So agreeing to do this, people would like, why would, if you're this phobia of doctors and a phobia of hospitals, why would you willingly go into a hospital and willingly go to all these doctor's appointments? Um, the biggest misconception is probably, you know, I guess maybe they're just scared of surgery, which I understand, but really, especially with a kidney surgery, they do so many of these that it's very low risk. The cool thing I forgot to mention about the liver surgery was that it was actually done by a robot. I mean, obviously the Dr. Hogsworth was there controlling the robot, but they want it to be so precise that they actually have a robot doing the surgery and doing the cutting and whatever. So, that was another thing that some people who heard were like, "Oh, I would never want that." I thought it was actually really kind of cool.
right,
So, I guess I'm just weird like that.
right, right. Um, so let's see here. Wow. So that's basically. I think that one of the things I wanted to highlight for the audience, and in terms of like Jewish adulting, what does this say to me? Um, first of all, b'makom she'ein ish, right? If in a place where there's not somebody, so you stand up and you take responsibility and you say, if there's no one else to do it, then I'll do it. So that's something that's really important. And then also that um, that people are very nervous about. I'm very busy. I have a family. I have a couple jobs. I have, all these things that are they're true realities and true things that limit us being able to do it. Um, and yet somehow you found a way to do it. And I think that's one of the reasons I sort of asked you at the beginning to explain your situation so that we have this mitzvah in the context of what exactly did you sacrifice, and it's still something that you have expressed that it's a sacrifice worth making, and
Definitely.
that's incredible. You're
So,
my role model.
aw, so hold on, wait, can I go back up and interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
When you were talking about sacrifices and work, so both Renewal and Liver Lifesavers really, they realize that this is definitely an expense and, not one that they take lightly. They really worked with us. They paid for Renewal, paid for every time we went back and forth for testing. They met us at the hospital with food galore, food coming out of our ears, like more food than we could even think of. Like while I was having the kidney surgery, they brought Yohanan like 2 pies of pizza and fries and salad and drinks. And he's like, I am one person. What am I doing with this food? And they just, he donated it to the nurses and they were very happy with him. Um, but they took care of us. They helped us with our time off of work. They helped with the meals in Baltimore for my kids. They helped, financially with, Yochanan's time off work, but he was busy helping me. They were able to help us with, come up with money for that stuff. So that is, and insurance obviously covers, both recipients' insurance cover the actual transplant. So really out of pocket for us, it was very minimal expense. So if that is the reserve that somebody's, if that's a big reserve that somebody has, that should not be a deciding factor because both Renewal and Liver Lifesavers really very much took care of that. And they were also there to guide us and to help us and to be there when we didn't know what we needed or even before we knew what we would need. Both organizations knew what we needed and were there to help us and guide us.
Wow.
Just a fun fact with Renewal, I think we were kidney match number 892. And for some perspective, with Liver Lifesavers, who's a fairly new organization, only a year old, we were number 6.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, very, very different numbers, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, both very worthwhile and amazing organizations. And if anybody listening has any questions or would like to, talk about organ donation or, is like on the fence, should they or shouldn't they donate, and want to reach out to me privately. One of the only reasons why I really came out public about the donations, I really wanted it to be quiet. I wanted like, you and my close friends to know, but I really did not want to go public and make it into this whole thing. And I decided, if my going, like you said, a lot of people know me, they know my parents, and I figured if I could help anybody donate just by listening to my story and being inspired by it, or by just knowing like, oh, I know somebody who did it, and if I can motivate or inspire somebody to donate, then it is worth going public and agreeing to this podcast and agreeing to, put it on Facebook. And Renewal had somebody from Israel write a whole story and, she called me, interview me about the kidney donation. And then I said to her, if you want to put a little bit of a twist on it, you can speak to Lior. So she actually interviewed him also, and then she kind of twisted our stories together and wrote a gorgeous article that was published. So these are all things that I only agreed to so that um I could agree to do this.
You could spread the
So
word
I'm
and
definitely
inspire.
exactly, definitely.
Yeah, I think everyone who listens will be as inspired. I'm so glad you were able to come on after your very busy day and your busy life. But thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Of
And
course.
it was fun, and we definitely need to catch up sometime soon.
No, we could do that offline without all your listeners listening.
That's right. Or maybe we should stay online. Might be interesting.
Let's not and say we did.
Okay. All right. Hold on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem.